is in custody in the county jail here in Orem, Utah, about 40 miles south of Salt Lake City. Ironically, authorities say it was Flanagan's friendship with a local business partner which allowed them to track down the lawyer who disappeared last July. The arrest took place at this motel where Flanagan had lived with a friend for the past month and a half. On a tip from St. Paul police, federal customs agents, the IRS, and local authorities had watched Flanagan and his buddy Frank Stoltz for several days. They took him into custody between 9 and 10 p.m. last night, Twin Cities time.
When we went to the apartment, he was inside. He was actually shining some shoes.
And he didn't put up a fight?
He did not put up any resistance whatsoever. He was good all the way.
This afternoon, the 54-year-old suspect was brought before a Utah County court, where for the first time he admitted his identity.
When we arrested him, he has tinted his hair to a sandy color. He has a full gray beard. He has lost considerable weight from the photos that we have. And so he had changed his appearance considerably.
Judge John Backlund set Flanagan's bail at $500,000, and authorities are awaiting affidavits from Minnesota before starting extradition proceedings. We should note here that authorities do not believe that Frank Stoltz was involved in the fraud and forgery case and was not arrested, but it was he who apparently let the cat out of the bag last June when he mentioned to someone in St. Paul that Flanagan had invested heavily in a motel out here. Authorities also discouraged reports that large amounts of money were found on Flanagan when he was arrested. They have told us that that is not the case at this point. What is baffling authorities here, however, tonight is why Flanagan was in the United States at all at this point. In court today, officials identified him from the passport which he was carrying with him. Debbie and Mike?
Mike, do they think it's going to be hard to extradite him? Is he going to fight it?
That was the point that was being tossed around tonight. It's not sure. Flanagan made no comment to the media today, nor did Mr. Stoltz. And if he fights extradition, officials estimate it would take a couple of weeks for him to be returned to the Minnesota officials, because they would have to go through a tedious and lengthy proceeding. If he does not fight extradition, he could be back within a matter of days.
All righty. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike Strand, reporting from Orem, Utah. And our second story tonight comes from the world of baseball. Pitcher Steve Howe, who was missing from the Minnesota Twins this week, now has been released from the team. And Tom Hanneman is here a bit early with that sports story that also has a great deal of news interest, Tom.
That's right. After his release, or his relapse with cocaine this weekend, Steve Howe met with Twins officials this morning. After that conversation, Howe requested and was granted his unconditional release from the team. Howe felt it best to devote his full and immediate attention to complete recovery from his problem.
When I came over here, Coach Miller said, you know, you're not going to be any more important or any less important than any of the other 24 guys, and that's basically what I've been looking for.
Steve Howe was filled with optimism last month after the Twins had allowed him another chance at baseball. The National League Rookie of the Year in 1980, Howe had battled a cocaine addiction, which eventually brought about his release from the game. After a concerted effort at treatment, Howe was confident he had licked his problem. Tonight, 5 weeks after he joined the Twins, Steve Howe has left the game again. At the Metrodome this afternoon, a number of Twins declined to talk about the issue. Those that did seemed sympathetic.
He did it, from what Ron Davis said. He asked for his release just so he didn't give the Twins any negative press. And he was very disappointed, and he thought that we would be upset with him, and you know, he didn't want to hurt us as a team.
No Twin knew Steve Howe better than Mike Smithson, whose locker was next to Howe's. Smithson liked the reliever and was impressed with his determination. Mike felt Howe was convinced his drug problem was over.
Yeah, I think so. Just the way he handled himself around the ball club, the things he was doing for the front office, taking drug tests, which were not mandatory. He was something he wanted to do to show the ball club that he was serious about playing baseball again. I think just the effort he gave on the field, people don't realize he had major arm surgery in February. Probably shouldn't have been pitching baseball any this year, but he had that self-desire to come back, and he wanted to play baseball, and I think he wanted to show the American public that Steve Howe was more than just a drug addict.
Before tonight's game, the Twins gathered near second base for their 1985 team picture, a picture that obviously did not include Steve Howe, and may well symbolize what a lost season this was for him. And we'll have a little more player reaction a bit later in sports.
All right, thank you, Tom. Debbie?
A Minneapolis woman who shot and killed a burglar in her home yesterday is free tonight after being held overnight by the police for questioning. Police say Georgetta Gravening was detained because she would not help authorities investigating the incident. Evidently, the man entered Gravening's bedroom carrying a shotgun. He was shot and killed as he tried to escape. While officials say Gravening did not know the victim, the case will probably go to a grand jury to decide if the shooting was a justifiable homicide. 14-year-old August Katzung is still in the hospital tonight after his foot was caught in an animal trap yesterday. It is not known who set the trap in the woods near Highway 12 and Penn Avenue, but his father says 4 of the boy's toes had to be amputated because of the damage. According to doctors, major reconstructive surgery will be needed if August is to walk normally again. The boy was moved about 30 feet from where the trap was set, and who moved him is still a mystery. August's father wants to know why the authorities are not helping him more.
I called the Minneapolis Police Department yesterday morning, the Park Police in particular, and was told that they could not get involved in finding any evidence because various legal ramifications.
August's father thinks the trap may have been set by a transient. There are several who live under a bridge in the area, but no one is coming forward. And tonight, the young boy remains in the hospital, and his father is still searching for clues as to why this accident happened. Mike?
When the emergency 911 phone system is working properly, it can save lives. But last night, a 911 dispatcher misheard the location of a hit-and-run victim. An important time was lost. The ambulance sent to help 25-year-old Debbie Vandenberg wound up at the wrong address. Trish Van Pilsum has more.
When Debbie Vandenberg didn't show up at a restaurant where she was supposed to meet her family, they went looking for her.
We were doing one last check, so I said, well, keep an eye in the ditches. So that's what we were doing, and, well, I saw a white because she had a white shirt on. And I saw white, so I stopped, and then I noticed the face, and I said, that's my sister.
Vandenberg was struck along the East River Road in front of George's and Fridley restaurant. Her brother drove to the nearest phone and dialed 911.
This is Dyer. Could you send an ambulance from across George's and Fridley?
What's the problem?
Huh?
What's the problem?
It's my sister. She was missing. We called in a missing report to the police department earlier.
Mm-hmm.
She's laid out coal in a ditch.
But the police dispatcher apparently misheard and thought the caller said his sister was near the Georgetown apartments. The dispatcher asked the caller, "Are you by the apartments?" He said yes, because in fact the phone he was using was. The dispatcher didn't double-check the address or get the caller's name, so the ambulance was sent to the apartment complex 2.5 miles north of the restaurant. By the time police arrived at the right spot, Diddy had picked his sister up and driven her to the hospital himself. Vandenberg apparently died as soon as she was hit. In this case, getting an ambulance there faster would not have made a difference, but 911 officials say that's not the important issue.
It's a concept that we assumed improperly. 911 is as great as it is, and to me it is great, is a tool. It's only a tool. It still is the human brain that's going to make a good or bad dispatcher and going to make a good or bad decision.
Even though I can't bring my sister back, it might help somebody else out there if they dial 911.
In the meantime, the Anoka County Sheriff's Office has no clues in its search for the hit-and-run driver. Trish Van Pilsum, WCCO Television News, Fridley.
A Cottage Grove man was indicted tonight for murder and abortion in the death of an unborn fetus. 25-year-old Donald Wickstrom was indicted this evening by the Washington County Grand Jury for second-degree murder. He allegedly beat up a pregnant woman last month, causing her 8.5-month-old fetus to be stillborn. He was also indicted for criminal abortion, and Wickstrom's attorney, Phil Villume, told us tonight, quote, "That's unprecedented and not supported by the facts of the case," unquote. Wickstrom is in jail in Stillwater tonight. He's set to appear in court tomorrow. And ahead on tonight's 10 p.m. report, could this be the lowest voter turnout in Minneapolis history?
We'll report on the results and talk live with Mayor Don Frazier. And also tonight, what the president had to say about a new weapon you can't see until it hits.
Baker Square knows how hard it can be to get started some mornings. With that in mind, we introduce breakfast with fresh ground coffee. hearty Baker Square omelets, golden pancakes, or our Belgian waffles. And to really get your motor running, our fresh baked caramel rolls, cinnamon rolls, and muffins. Breakfast with fresh rolls at Baker Square. It could give you a fast start on the day.
One store sells more GE microwaves and appliances than any other.
Best Buy Company.
Because one store sells GE microwaves and appliances for less than any other.
Best Buy Company.
And now, Best Buy Company has microwaves and appliances from GE and other top manufacturers at sale prices that are even lower than before.
If you want to save money, look for this ad in your Wednesday newspaper. Then shop the Best Buy Company, your new appliance store.
Wholesaling automotive parts just wasn't enough. This company wanted to go into the retail end of the business. They wanted a bank with financial horsepower to help them buy retail stores. And they got it, fast, because we knew their business. We opened doors with creative financing that met their needs. No matter what your business is, there's only one place where you can expect this kind of performance. The First Banks. We are the business banks, where your business belongs.
It's amazing. Northwest Orient can fly you to London for just $200. First, fly just one trip with Northwest Orient for $300 or more. Then with this coupon, well, look at these fares to the Sun, to Frankfurt or London, to Hong Kong. For all the details, check Monday's newspaper or see your travel agent. I'd tell you more, but I'm kind of busy.
People who know value go Northwest Orient.
The democratic process was at work today as voters in Minneapolis and Wayzata went to the polls. Tonight we will report on the results in this section. We will also hear from those who voted in the race into office already. We'll talk live with Mayor Fraser about his primary win and also report on President Reagan's first news conference in 3 months. We begin with the president.
And the last time that Mr. Reagan formally took questions from the news media was on June 18th. Tonight, the economy and defense took center stage. Jim Gately reports from our Washington newsroom.
President Reagan wants to open up more foreign markets to American products. Tonight, he urged, quote, free and fair trade for all. By doing that, Mr. Reagan is going against a congressional desire to impose higher tariffs on imported goods. The aim of trade protectionism is to penalize or restrict foreign goods, thereby making them more expensive. And as a result, American-made products become better buys. Clearly, the president doesn't buy the theory.
A mindless stampede toward protectionism will be a one-way trip to economic disaster.
Mr. Reagan says history has shown that other countries would retaliate, causing a trade war. He claimed that if other nations excluded our products, agriculture would be hit hard.
Protectionist tariffs would invite retaliation that could enliven deliver, I should say, an economic death blow to literally tens of thousands of American family farms.
The president also expressed hope that something might be accomplished at the upcoming November summit with Soviet leader Gorbachev. While predicting no major breakthrough, Mr. Reagan said it's better to get along, even with the Russians.
We're the only two nations in the world, I believe, that can start a world war. And we're the only two that can prevent it. And I think that's a great responsibility to all of mankind, and we'd better take it seriously.
Defensive space weapons, the so-called Star Wars plan, is not a negotiable item, according to the president. Mr. Reagan claims we can't give up this laser technology because the Soviets are ahead of us.
We couldn't stand by and allow them to have a monopoly on the ability to shoot down satellites when we are so dependent on them for communication, even weather and so forth.
Mr. Reagan says the United States will go ahead with the research and testing of the Star Wars approach, but he added at this point he will not ask that the weapons be deployed. Jim Gately, WCCO News, Washington.
There's been another potential security leak in West Germany. This time it involves Chancellor Helmut Kohl's secretary, Herta Willner. Today, his office received her resignation letter, postmarked East Germany. Willner and her husband are suspected of having spied for the Soviet Union. The spy scandal comes at a time when West Germany's been involved in negotiations for a strategic defense initiative. Kohl's office denies that Willner had any access to information about that defense plan. However, she did handle information about West Germany's future scientific programs.
Tonight, incumbent Donald Frazier is the winner of one of the winners of the mayoral primary in Minneapolis. Here are the results as they stand so far. With all of the precincts reporting in, Mayor Frazier with 16,927 votes, followed by candidate Jensen, 1,321, and the list goes down. Mayor Frazier, who will be trying for his second four-year term, joins us tonight from his election headquarters. And here he is right now. Are these wins getting to be old hat for you?
Well, each election has its own special qualities. There wasn't a lot of excitement in this primary, mostly because there were only one or two council races. And I don't think people saw that the mayor's race was that exciting either. But anyway, it was nice to come through with the totals that we got.
Mayor Frazier, we had last week in St. Paul, I think a 6% turnout, not a whole lot more in Minneapolis today. Can you see a reason for very light voter turnout in these primaries?
Well, I think the lack of contest is the main reason. Voters really don't become aware and get very excited unless they have candidates knocking on their doors and they become aware that they need to turn out in order to settle an issue. But there were really only one or two wards where that was true, but I think for the rest of the races, people didn't see a reason to turn out. They weren't very much aware. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we saw tonight, I think.
All right, as you head into your general election campaign, what are the main themes that you'll be hitting?
The same themes that I've been talking about the last 4 years. My number one priority for the city is to keep working on the problems of poverty and joblessness. That's very important to the long-term economic vitality of the city. We'll also be continuing the program of sound law enforcement, I hope under the leadership of Tony Boza. We're going to be working to keep the neighborhoods, neighborhood housing strong and good condition. We're going to be working on downtown. Downtown is in relatively good shape, but there's some weak spots, and we need to address those.
All right, thank you very much, Mayor Don Frazier, and congratulations on your primary victory and the enthusiasm of your supporters at your headquarters tonight. Good luck to you, sir.
A lot of people evidently happy by that.
All right.
As Mike mentioned earlier, there was an extremely light voter turnout, and there were no unexpected developments in the primary races. Let's look at some of those. In the council race for the first ward, incumbent Walt Dietzick easily won tonight with 1,730 votes, and George Belair was the runner-up with 411 votes. In all of today's races, the first two finishers win the right to run in November's general election. With all of the precincts reporting in the third ward now, incumbent Sandra Hillary took the most votes, 1,918. She was followed closely by Joe Bernay with 1,848 votes, and Arthur Larson trailed with a distant 68. Results from the fifth ward show incumbent Van White winning with 985 votes. Rashad Hassan was second in this ward with 140 votes. In the 8th City Council ward, another incumbent, Sharon Sales Belton, easily won with 974 votes. Second, Estelle Farmer with 189. In the last City Council ward race today, in the 9th ward, Tony Scallon got the most votes, 1,536 to Joan Galick with 469. Rick Johnson, a close third with 457 votes. Now turning to the Board of Estimation and Taxation. In that particular race, Nelson was the winner, 878. Hansen in second with 5,947, and Baumgartner, 4,151. And finally, in the race for Park Board, incumbent Naomi Loper overwhelmingly won tonight's primary with 8,896 votes. She was followed by Lenny Neiman, who got 2,544 votes. Tonight's voter turnout just over 9%, the lightest in Minneapolis history. Only 22,000 voters went to the polls today. Mike?
And as we mentioned, they were also voting in Wayzata today, in this case trying to decide on spending for their schools. The issue is over a $2.5 million referendum to fund schools. School officials say without it, they'd be operating in the red. It's the 5th time in 2 years voters have been asked to spend more. 3 of the previous issues had failed. Here then are the results. Tonight, overwhelmingly, it passed by close to 4-1.
The St. Paul City Council voted today to help the city's homeless. On any given night, it is estimated that 1,100 people have no place to call home in St. Paul, and those who cannot find shelter in church basements often spend their nights under bridges and in tunnels. The council has decided to establish an overnight shelter board. The board will annually review the homeless situation and formulate solutions.
And we want to look at several stories ahead on our report this evening. Later, Tony Vigneri reports on the growing fear of AIDS and myths surrounding it. Terry Sater looks at tonight's gala tribute for our own Dave Moore. Some old faces return to the Twin Cities. And coming up next, Dan Carlson with our own outlook as we head now into fall.
Taking off inches. For millions of people in this country, it's become an obsession. It's for that reason Citizen introduces the world's thinnest water-resistant watch. If we can't take inches off your waist, we can at least take millimeters off your wrist. Citizen's ultra-thin collection.
At Donaldson's Fine Jewelry.
I know you have a crush on me.
No, I don't. I knew it. It's me. Phew, hey, get serious.
Tuesday night following the 10 p.m. report.
You've never married.
No, well, I was married once, and it turned out the guy had a wife somewhere else, so we had to...
You did not discover rejection. Let me just have a... Wait a minute. Who has not discovered rejection? It's forever been that way.
I told him, cuddle me, hold me, do what you want. I love it.
I don't want her to hang on me 24 hours a day. Some of these girls, they want love, romance. Come here, come here. I got a wife.
We hope you'll join us.
Donna Hughes, weekday mornings at 8 a.m. on WCCO television.
Stop into First Federal today. Our low-rate home equity loans can make your money go further.
Dan Carlson is here tonight for Mike Fairborn, and if we like rain, I bet we're going to like the forecast.
Well, there's not a whole lot of rain in the forecast, really just an instant replay of the past couple of days with widely scattered showers or thunder showers. That's the way it's shaping up for the next 2 to 3 days. Currently, we have a temperature of 71. That's down from our 79-degree high today, way above the normal, as was the overnight low of 67. A trace of precipitation. The sunset this evening was at 7:21. Skies have clouded up in our metro area. The dew point is at 64 degrees. As I mentioned, 71 the current temperature. 79% humidity. Winds from the southeast at 9. The barometer 29.79 and rising. Well, when we last talked weather at 6 o'clock this evening, there were some showers out around Paynesville. They developed into some moderate thunder showers passing just to the southeast of St. Cloud before tracking off into Wisconsin. Then some more thunder showers developed between the Twin Cities and Rochester, moving to the northeast at about 45 miles per hour. And a live look now at Weather Watch Color Radar shows that they have since moved now well into Wisconsin between Eau Claire and La Crosse, and some widely scattered light showers are beginning to creep up out here in west central Minnesota. So there still is the possibility of a shower or thunder shower by dawn. Our high temperatures today were in the 70s over the Great Lakes region, some 80s in western Minnesota, back down through parts of South Dakota. But a big pool of cool air is building back in the west. Some snow today in the higher elevations of the Montana Rockies. If it wasn't the heat, it was the humidity and the dew points. 60-degree and 70-degree dew points during the evening hours, covering the eastern half of the five-state area, while back to the west, cooler and drier air has been lying in wait, and hopefully it'll get here sometime later in the week or over the weekend. Our overnight lows tonight are going to be in the 60s over southern Minnesota into the metro area, 50s up to our north, maybe even some 40s in northwestern Minnesota and across much of the Dakotas during the nighttime hours. And it looks as though little change is foreseen in our weather map with that persistent low pressure area out in South Dakota, a stationary front across Minnesota, and a series of impulses over the next few days will be moving along that front, bringing widely scattered showers and thunder showers. High temperatures tomorrow will hit the 80s in extreme southern Minnesota, 70s to our north, and still that cool air building back to the west, and we'll see that in the extended outlook in just a moment. But first, in the more immediate future, a chance of some fog developing overnight, already getting a bit dense in some outstate areas. A chance of a thunder shower by dawn as well, with south winds at 5 to 15 and a low near 66 degrees. On Wednesday, variable cloudiness, a slight chance of a shower or a thunderstorm. Winds from the south at 10 to 20 with a high near 80 degrees. For Wednesday night, partly to mostly cloudy, still a slight chance of a shower or thunderstorm with a low of 63, and pretty much the same holds true as the stationary system remains with us through Thursday. The extended outlook reflects some changes, though, mostly in the form of temperature changes, dropping down into the lower 60s for highs by Saturday and lows down into the upper 30s or lower 40s. So that cold air is just sitting out there, Debbie, waiting to arrive.
You know, we're celebrating this month-long British festival, and it would seem like at least this week our weather is very British.
Indeed, very London-like.
Wear your London fog. Thank you very much, Dan. Well, tonight's In Brief has a rather judicial tone to it.
And so, Mike, tonight our news roundup will be legal briefs. Louisiana Governor Edwin Edwards went on trial today in New Orleans, charged with racketeering and fraud. Prosecutors allege he earned $10 million while out of office, approving certificates for new hospitals in areas they were not needed. And in St. Paul today, 2 Indian-operated schools sued the federal government for $1 million. School officials say the feds denied the Red Schoolhouse and the Heart of Earth School this amount for the first time in 12 years. In other Twin Cities legal matters, 8 people arrested for trespassing at the Minneapolis office of Senator Dave Durenberger last year went on trial today. The 8 were among approximately 30 people who occupied the office to protest the senator's vote on a Nicaraguan aid package. The verdict in this case will apply to all of those arrested in connection with last year's protest.
For exciting competition, Tom Kennedy sets the stage with The Price is Right.
901.
With fabulous prizes on the line.
A new sports car.
The excitement's catching.
In your brand new custom van, Ronald is our winner.
Come on down to the new Price is Right. Weekday afternoons at 4:30 on WCCO Television, Channel 4.
The next edition of Our Magazine is a celebration of the 1000th hour. Join Gary Collins and the Our Magazine regulars, along with Brian Gumbel and David Hartman, for some priceless moments from the past 5 years with Burt Reynolds, George Burns, Jane Fonda, Dudley Moore, and George Hamilton, plus a very special surprise. It's the 1000th edition of Our Magazine, the best hour of your day. Wednesday morning at 9 on WCCO Television.
Tonight we have a sad ending to what had been a happy story.
13-year-old Jason Beldy of Minneapolis died today. You'll recall that we first met Jason two years ago as he and his family searched for a bone marrow donor. Jason suffered from a rare form of leukemia. No one in his family could donate the bone marrow, so an unrelated donor was sought. This summer, he underwent the transplant at the University of Minnesota. It was one of the first operations involving an unrelated donor. At first, Jason was doing quite well, but now doctors say the match apparently just did not succeed.
Doctors and medical experts have also had little success in quelling the public's fear about getting the disease AIDS. Proof of that comes in a recent New York Times CBS poll. It finds that more and more people are concerned about getting the disease from casual contact. Tony Vigneri reports on the fears of Minnesotans.
In the Twin Cities and all across the country, it has people talking and some people protesting. The fear that you'll get AIDS through casual contact is penetrating society.
The fear of the disease is very legitimate, but some of the ways that it's expressing itself are somewhat irrational.
It's irrational, Floyd says, because the research shows that you can't get AIDS by touching or just being in the same room with a person who has AIDS. But with more and more people coming down with AIDS each day, is the general population at risk? State epidemiologist Mike Osterholm says no, but he adds it's a two-edged sword.
That this is probably the worst disease that we will know in this lifetime.
He says that in one breath, while in another he's out
calming the fears and the phobias among the general public who need not worry about it at all if in fact they are not participating in one of these high-risk activities.
Those high-risk activities include sex among gay and bisexual men with multiple sex partners, men who use prostitutes, and women who have sex with bisexual men. Also at risk are those sharing the same needle when injecting drugs. All that has been well publicized, but people still wonder if you can get AIDS from toilet seats, towels, touching, coughing, or sneezing. The answer is no. Or how about getting AIDS if you're served by a gay waiter with AIDS? The answer is still no. Osterholm and the State AIDS Task Force are trying to calm the public down, trying to educate and communicate the facts and myths of AIDS. But calming the fears of the general public is not the only priority on the AIDS Task Force list. Next month, the task force will ask the state legislature for $500,000 in emergency funding so the state health department can continue its work on AIDS research, AIDS testing, and AIDS education. Tony Vigneri, WCCO Television News, Minneapolis.
It's going down to the wire in baseball. The pennant races highlight Tom Hanneman's sports report coming up next.
Weekdays at 3, join us for one of America's most popular game shows, the all-new Newlywed Game.
What's the difference between stupid and dumb?
Well, it means the same thing.
No. You can be stupid, then you can be dumb.
What's the difference?
Dumb is dumb, stupid is stupid.
You never know what those unpredictable newlyweds will do next. The all-new Newlywed Game, afternoons at 3 on Channel 4.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight's news is headlined. Good evening. I'm Dave Moore.
Hi, Al Austin Moore here.
And we're not related.
Boy, look at all that water. You know, doom-cha, doom-cha, doom-ta, doom-cha. Sing ho for a bear. That is the way it was.
One more time on nostalgic tribute to Dave Moore, Friday night at 9 on Channel 4.
And heading now into the last couple of weeks of September, the old pennant races, at least one of which is still hanging in there.
That's right. None of them, of course, in the Twin Cities. We're really kind of robbed of pennant fever this last month. Everyone's forgotten about the Twins, and I guess with the Vikings playing so well, it makes sense. Timing is everything in sports, and right now St. Louis is running like clockwork. The Cardinals now hold a 2-game lead over the Mets because they beat Pittsburgh 10-4 tonight. Joaquin Andujar picked up his 21st victory. It'll be crying time for the New York Mets if they don't pick up the pace and play better than .500 ball like they've been playing the last week. Philadelphia's Ozzie Virgil smacked a 2-run homer to beat Ed Lynch and New York 5-1. In the American League, Gene Mauch is wondering where his once 8-game lead went. Tonight in Chicago, he also had Rod Carew to worry about. Carew was out and down after this double steal attempt. Indeed, Carlton Fisk proved to be an immovable object. Carew wasn't seriously injured, however. Sox won the game 5-2. Well, moving to the American League East, Tony Armas knocked his 3-run homer over the Big Green Monster in Fenway as Boston beat Toronto tonight 6-5. It is gone. In Detroit, Ron Guidry became the Tigers' best friend by allowing 5 home runs, including a pair to Darrell Evans, who smashed both Taters to the upper deck. Billy Martin not a happy man tonight because his Yankees were blown out of the ballpark 9-1, the final in that game. So in the American League West, Seattle, 7-0 victors over Seattle. They lead the Angels by 2 games. In the East, Toronto maintains its 5-game lead over the New York Yankees. And the Twins, well, of course, they're nowhere near the pennant race, but they have not given up on the season quite yet. Tonight at the Metrodome, they ripped the Rangers 7-2. Gary Gaetti, who beat Texas with an 11th-inning home run last night, brought in the first run. But the story of this game was Frank Viola, who went the distance on a 4-hitter. Frank fanned 6 tonight and improved his record to 15-14. Viola has 6 complete games this season. Tom Bernansky added a bit of insurance here with a towering homer to left center, his 26th of the year, as the Twins, 16.5 games out of first, beat the Rangers, who are now 30.5 games off the pace. The series resumes tomorrow afternoon. Well, earlier on our 10 p.m. report, we heard a couple Twins' reaction to Steve Howe's release. Mike Smithson also addressed how professionally and personally there are 2 sides to that story.
Hopefully there's going to be some way he can come out of it because he's really a nice human being. I had a privilege to locker beside him in the short time he was here with the Twins and had a chance to talk to him a little bit. And I think he's really sincere about him trying to get over his problem. Obviously, it's a little tougher than people perceive it to be. Professionally, I'm a little disappointed. He let our ball club down a little bit. We had a big 5-game series there in Cleveland where we could have used him. He put a little pressure on our bullpen. And professionally, I felt a little let down, but personally, I feel a little sorry, too, for the man. So I've got 2 opinions.
Finally tonight, Alfrederick Hughes was one of the nation's leading scorers in college basketball last year. Apparently, Mr. Hughes is preparing for his NBA career by living in the fast lane, literally. Last night, the Missouri State Patrol picked up Hughes after clocking him at 128 miles an hour in his Mercedes-Benz.
That's that money. You got that big contract.
Yes. Amazing. 128 miles an hour.
Thanks, Tom.
You bet.
Well, this is that time in our newscast when Dave Moore usually slips into his bedtime story, his whimsical look at some local or national news story.
But my Dave is not with us this evening. Instead, he is out at the Carelton Celebrity Room where co-workers of the past and present are helping him mark a milestone in his career. Terry Sater took in the festivities.
Of course, he is an institution in Minnesota, and our guest of honor tonight, Mr. Dave Moore.
It's a night of memories, old newsreels, old friends, laughs, and tears. It's a tribute to Dave Moore. The Carlton is full of his colleagues, people like CBS News correspondent Phil Jones, who started working with Dave at Channel 4 in 1962.
What we remember are the good things about Dave. And he was a great person, and I think we were all honored to be associated with him because his success met our success.
Another old friend and co-worker of Dave's is CBS News correspondent Susan Spencer.
I really felt privileged to be able to have my first anchor job with him because he's able somehow, and I think it's probably because he's got an actor's training, he's able to project a sense of caring, but the difference that between him and other people who do the same thing is that he really means it.
Dave says there's one thing that bothers him about the tribute, and that is that some people still think it's a retirement party.
At the University of Minnesota several years ago, we got very friendly with an economics professor named Andreas Papandreou and his wife, who is a roommate of my wife's, and he has since become the Prime Minister of Greece. I got a letter today from them saying, "Thank heaven you're not retiring. I know the people there will look forward to you reading the news at 6. They know about me in Athens, Greece."
Dave Moore started on the 10 o'clock news in 1957, the year before I was born. Like many others, I grew up with him reading the news. Hopefully, I'll grow much older with him still on Channel 4. In my mind, he'll never retire. Terry Sater, WCCO Television News, Bloomington.
Hopefully we all will grow older with Dave.
Indeed, and it looks like quite a tribute was paid out at the Carelton Celebrity Room this evening to Dave Moore.
And incidentally, we'll be airing a special on Dave's career, and that's coming up this Friday at 9 o'clock in the evening.
That's right. Look forward to that. Go ahead.
Looking at our weather forecast for tomorrow, one more time. A high of 80 degrees.
And that will do it for this belated edition of the 10 p.m. report. Thanks for joining us, and have a good evening.
At Color Tile, we're running out of room. So now through Saturday only, we're taking drastic measures to make room by cutting prices in half or whatever it takes. We've cut 50% off a wide selection of ceramic wall, ceramic floor, and mosaic tile. And save on selected wall cover.